Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us today. I have two of my colleagues who I highly respect, and Director Byrd from Winter Haven. He is the Director of Public Safety for not only the police department, but the fire department. If you find me calling him Chief, he said that's okay because he was the chief before he was the director. And Chief Andy Ray, who I've worked with for many years. They epitomize what professional law enforcement is all about. They joined us as well as members of the Orlando Police Department and the Orange County Sheriff's Office to do our Operation Child Protector. And once again, Child Protector is very important to us. It's very important to the community. Most importantly, it's important to the children who we saved. What you see on this board here, and I'm going to go over this individually, are deviants. Incredible deviants. They travel from as far away as Clewiston, Florida. One even came from Los Angeles. He was in the Orlando area, decided that he'd stop in and engage a 13 and 14-year-old child in sex. But much to their chagrin, instead of meeting with children, young children, they were met by law enforcement officers from the police departments as well as the sheriff's office who were online, undercover, posing as children. I'm going to introduce you to these folks for just a few minutes and give you some of the information that is pertinent to their deviant conduct. These are nasty people. And when we go through this, understand that obviously we can't even use the words that they used. We obviously can't show you the pictures and the video clips that they sent to what they thought were 13-year-old little girls and little boys. But we'll start with Jonathan McGrew. Jonathan works for Disney. He's a custodian. He works at Hollywood Studios. And he dates Savannah Lawrence. Guess what? She's a custodian. She works for Disney Hollywood Studios. So this pair showed up thinking that they would have a threesome with a 13-year-old little girl. The suspect sent videos of he and Savannah having sex to what he thought was a 13-year-old child. In fact, he said to the child, "We want to enjoy this opportunity. We don't want to rush. And then at the conclusion, maybe even we'll cuddle a little bit." Are you kidding me? That's how you're talking toward 13-year-old children. He went on to say that our fantasy is to play stepdad, stepdaughter, stepmom, teacher, student, maybe even shoplifter, where we do a strip search. So he gave all of these details before the two of them showed up. Well, guess what? Savannah said, "I'm just a follower." But she admitted and confessed that they came there to engage a child. Well, if that's not enough, Disney employees, how about another one? This one is a lifeguard at Disney Animal Kingdom Lodge. Kenneth Aquino, he's 26. He left his girlfriend, who was 7 months pregnant with his child, in order to go have sex with a child, a 13-year-old. He bragged about his prowess and how wonderful he was. He's a Navy veteran. That's right, he was working toward a dive team or a SEAL team or some kind of special ops job. They did a background on him and found out that he had friends or affiliates that were gang members, and they tossed him. But that didn't stop him from showing up in his work clothes from Disney in order to have sex. He confessed. And then we have Juan Guadalupe Arroyo. He's a registered nurse for Advent Healthcare and Celebration. Now, don't you know that you want to wake up in a hospital with a registered nurse that was just visiting a 14-year-old to have sex? Well, Juan was locked up, and he didn't have the opportunity to do any kind of thing with a 14-year-old. And then there's Philip Nelson. He traveled to meet a 14-year-old girl. He left his 7- and 8-year-old children with his mother so he could show up to have sex with a child. That's right. He's employed by Powertown Line Construction, and he confessed that he left his children with his mother so he could have sex. Did I mention our detectives that work this operation are simply the very best? They're skilled in talking as if they're 13 and 14-year-old children. And they worked around the clock for a week in order to arrest 17 people. So now we'll introduce you to Carlos Flores. He is a store manager for Starbucks. I bet they're proud. He's assigned to the Orlando International Airport. He has a 13-year-old female who he was pursuing and thought that he was going to engage in sex. But he did not want to come inside the building. He wanted the girl to meet him in his car, because that was his fantasy, to have sex with a child in the car. Now, because of HIPAA, I won't tell you which one, but I can tell you that one of the people that we are talking about today was HIV positive. Did you hear what I'm telling you? He's HIV positive. He showed up to have unprotected sex with what he thought was a child. Now, if that's not the worst of the worst, I can't imagine how it gets any worse. The guy is HIV positive. Let me say that again, because, you just can't believe it when you hear it the first time. He's HIV positive. He shows up to have what he thinks is going to be unprotected sex with a child, with a little girl. Fortunately, our detectives were there instead of a 13-year-old child. But guess what? Had it been a curious little girl as opposed to our very experienced detectives, she would have been directly exposed to HIV this weekend. And then there's Thomas Snyder. He is a custodian. There's something with custodians, this operation. But he works for Valencia Hills Nursing and Rehab Center in Lakeland. He thought he was showing up to have sex with a 14-year-old boy. In fact, he was at work when he was carrying on the conversations with the undercover operatives. You can't make this up. You can't make up what I'm about to tell you. He says, "I like smelly feet." Did you hear that? He likes smelly feet. He wanted to smell the little boy's feet. And then he wanted to play with his toes. This dude right here, 5 brain cells, 4 aren't working. All of these guys, 5 brain cells, 4 aren't working. These are dangerous people. He talked really, really nasty during the undercover conversations, which tells us that that was probably part of his fantasy or his sexual desire. And then there's Jeremiah Davis from Clewiston. He came from Clewiston. He is a garbage truck driver. That's what he does. He hauls garbage to the dump. Well, we hauled him to the jail. He's also an Army veteran, and he thought he was going to show up for a 14-year-old girl. And then there's David Ring. David Ring's not employed, but he sent videos doing nasty things to this child, what he thought was a 14-year-old girl. He liked to talk nasty. He had a lot of deviant comments that he made along the way. He said his fantasy was to meet her in a pharmacy bathroom to engage her in sex. This guy's got a problem. The reality is they all have a lot of problems that they've created for themselves for violating the law, and we want to send them to prison. We want to keep away from little girls and little babies. Then there's Jared Justice, all the way from Los Angeles, California. He showed up on vacation, but he only needed to buy a one-way ticket because he's not flying back to Los Angeles anytime soon. He's married. Mrs. Justice, did you hear that? Your married husband showed up from Los Angeles thinking he was going to have sex with a 13-year-old little girl while you're in Los Angeles behaving and holding the house down. His last name is Justice. That's what we're going to get. Justice for justice. And our justice for justice, we hope, will be 10 or 15 years in prison. This ain't California. You know, there won't be a wave and a smile and out the back door here. Oh, he brought condoms and candy. Sour Patch Kids. I don't think they came from Los Angeles. He stopped at the convenience store. And there's Julio Cedeno Jr. He's a contractor. He's from Zephyr Hills. He's married. He thought he was going to have sex with a 13-year-old. Now, all he did was transmit harmful materials. He would not travel. So he's married. He talked about having sex with a 13-year-old child, but he only transferred harmful materials. What does that mean? Nasty photographs, usually of himself or of some other deviant sexual acts. I don't think his wife's going to be happy about this. Then we have Lior Inbar. He delivers pizzas for Domino's out of Orlando. He thought he was going to have sex with a 14-year-old child. And he wanted to have a safe word for her. Well, we have a safe word: jail. He's in jail. He can't hurt her or anyone else. He lived with his parents. A lot of these folks live with their mom or live with their parents. Then there's Joshua Ortega. He says he worked at the L House. He lives with his mom. He wanted to have sex with a 13-year-old girl. Mom, you need to have a talk with this dude. He's your son. He was living at home, and he wants to have sex with a little girl. You need to have a talk with him. You need to tell him that he's going to prison for a long time. The last one I'm going to speak about here is Edward McGaffigan. He's from Orlando. He says he's a professional poker player. He lost. It didn't work well. He doubled down, and we trumped him. He sent harmful material. He thought it was a 14-year-old girl. So when we went to pick him up, we actually showed him the chats. You know what he said? Oh, this is real bad. No kidding. It's real bad. Now you say to yourself, Self, why didn't he travel? He couldn't travel. Somebody stole his car. So he just talked nasty and sent harmful material. So at the end of the day, this is just one more investigation of many that we have. But the strength, once again, of our investigations are with the men and women of the police departments who work very, very hard alongside of us to make this successful. Let me turn the podium first over to Chief Andy Ray and then to Director Byrd for their comments.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good afternoon. Just wanted to say thank you to the Sheriff for his leadership on this particular operation, operations of this sort. Operation Child Protector is another success, obviously. Our concern is, we all share the concern, and that is for kids. We know it's parents and grandparents' jobs to look after their children, to try to give them guidance and to protect them from things that are out there. The web is a dangerous place. There are lots of places that people like this, bad actors, can get to children, and it's important for them to understand that and to reinforce that with their kids. There are lots of opportunities to get in between that, and so we want parents and grandparents to do that. In addition to that, it's our job to help protect those kids from people who would prey on them. And so we're always glad to work with the Sheriff's Office. We have a great relationship in Polk County, all the agencies here. And anytime we can work together to make the county a safer place, especially for children, we're going to do that. So thanks for the opportunity to work with you, Sheriff, and we look forward to the next time.
Thank you, Sheriff. First and foremost, I think the message needs to be, parents, wake up, pay attention. These weren't actual children that were victimized here, but these predators are out there. Don't forget that. Pay attention to that. Listen to this. That's what these messages are for. The second thing is, it absolutely baffles me that we continue to do these things and we keep having results like this. Right here. It's not going away. Again, parents, pay attention to the message. They're not going away. And the next thing I want to say is, I appreciate the relationships in this county with our fellow agencies, the Sheriff's Office. I think you're going to have to go a long way. Actually, I don't even think you'll be able to find one with relationships that we have in the county anywhere in this country like this. We work together, and I want to commend the detectives that put their heart and soul into this. And y'all need to remember something as well on these detectives. They're dealing with these guys and all that nastiness that they're doing. They got families at home. They got children at home, grandkids at home, and they're having to deal with this nastiness. And they're going to continue to do it. And for that, I appreciate all of y'all, because I got grandkids that age, and I appreciate that. So, Sheriff, thank you. And we will continue to be a part of this. And we'll keep putting people in jail if they want to keep doing this.
I have one other case that I need to talk about, but are there any questions for the chief or for me before we get to that? Yes, ma'am.
Was contact made via social media, and if so, what site?
Yes, ma'am. Contact was made on several different social media sites, and we don't tell which ones for obvious reasons, because there will be other investigations on other days. You know, that's the downside of social media. It's made the predators easier to get to the children. and they are online scouring for children. So don't think that this was their first time, and don't think that they haven't found some child in the past to attack. But on this day and this time, the detectives from Orlando, Orange County Sheriff's Office, Winter Haven Police, Auburndale Police, and the Sheriff's Office stopped them. And our goal is to send them to prison for a long time. Other questions?
Sheriff, the pool seems to be getting smaller. I mean, you've done a ton of these over the course of years. Do you think some of these guys are finally getting the message?
You know, you would like to think that the ones that weren't locked up, maybe they've gotten the message. Some of them have gotten a little more difficult to arrest. Some of them just won't come to Polk County any longer. But my colleagues do these operations around the state, and we partner up, like we'll go help other jurisdictions in other parts of the state, just as Orlando and Orange County came to help us this time with Winter Haven and Auburndale, who's there every time with us. So at the end of the day, when we started this, it was not unusual, as you said, to arrest 30 or 40 at a time. But 17 is the most we've gotten in a long time, unfortunately. So they don't go away. And as you can see, these are not kids. These are not kids doing stupid stuff. These are adults, at least chronologically. I'm not sure where they are mentally to do something like this, but
So why the difference in numbers?
I think that we are effective at locating them. There's a lot of these folks that are currently in prison from past operations. There are a lot of them that are now designated sex offenders that may be out of prison, but we watch, and they can't legally have access to technology, which that cuts down the population. I think our colleagues from around the state are arresting people, but we are happy that we caught 17, but normally a good operation is anything around 8 to 10 now. And we really arrested more than that. I'm sorry there's any on this board. I'm sorry we found one, but they're there. And they're online 24/7 looking for your child to sexually batter or worse.
Are they themselves on their profiles, or are they posing as others?
Well, they do it different ways, but no, usually they just hit us up and communicate, but they like to get off of the social media and then chat or move to a different platform. So they may find us in one platform, then they want to move to talk. A lot of them like to talk. They like to talk nasty. They may move you to another platform or through whichever social media. Then they start sending pictures of themselves nude and themselves doing deviant acts or participating in deviant acts. You can't imagine, because normal people can't, the things that they were doing and saying to what they thought were children. Yes, ma'am?
Yes, so, you, with these people, I didn't lose my question. I
Well,
was getting ready to write it down.
when you think about it, ask me again, because I'm not going anyplace.
Okay, so, yes, do these people, I'm sorry, I don't know how to word the question, but, what, I apologize.
Let's hang in there. And if this one gets past you, we'll have another operation. Just write it down and save it for the next one, because it'll be applicable then. Yes, ma'am?
So it sounds like you all posing as a child reached out to them, or did anyone first reach out to the posed child?
We post,
Okay.
and sometimes they post. So we search the web, and they're searching the web, and then you meet. What normally they go to childlike places where children would be. And it may be game rooms, it may be just where kids chat, and then they start communication, and it works from there.
What would you tell
Absolutely. First and foremost, you may have seen some advertisements we've done through billboards. We can't even get the cell phone providers to provide the cell phones with the child lock on their cell phone. So we tell everybody to lock the children's cell phone. You've got to know who your children are talking to, who they're communicating with. There's several professional apps that you can, as a parent, get. So if your child has a cell phone, you can see who they're communicating with. So you've got to be in charge of your child. And I tell folks what I learned from my dad a long, long time ago when he looked me in the eye as a young man and said, "Son, it's not my job to be your friend. It's my job to be your parent. And if I parent you right now, when you grow up, we'll be friends." And my dad and I were best friends my entire adult life. We weren't best friends all the time when I was a teenager. But I tell parents, be a parent. Be all up in your child's business. Know who their friends are, know who and where they're communicating. It's the only way to keep these folks away because they know how to talk kid. They have charisma, they have personality. And it's frightening how convincing they can be. Yes, ma'am?
I hope I'm not jumping the gun on this one, but is this what the sheriff's office is working on with Tim and the upcoming public service announcements?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and Tim is working on a phase of this whereby we're trying to get parents, and really we'd like cell phone companies, just send the phone to your provider to be retailed with the child locks in place. Adults can unlock it. You can go on and unlock it, but just send it. The data is something like 90% of all children with a cell phone don't have the child lock in place. And it's a dangerous adult tool. Any other questions? I want to talk for just a minute about a sexual predator, a child sexual predator. Now, it's separate from this investigation. Our detectives just did a remarkable job making the arrest of Eric Roe. Let me tell you about Eric Roe. He's 32 years of age. We have him charged with capital sexual battery of a child that he had access to. He has been inappropriately touching this 8-year-old child. He has been inappropriately touching this 8-year-old child since she was 4 years old. And we have documented by his own admission that there has been at least 10 molestations during that period of time by his statements. When it was discovered that he had actually sexually battered this child, who is now 8 years of age, he made the statement that his conduct was animalistic. I agree with that. He said he's ashamed of himself. I agree with that, but it's a little too late. So when you think that this guy was attacking a girl, a baby, from the time she was 4 until she was 8, when it just came to our attention the other day, and he actually made a statement that the victim would need psychological counseling, then he said, for what we did together. Not what we did together. That baby will need psychological counseling for what you did to her. He told the victim, we got to keep it a secret. It's our secret. Well, it's no secret. The most we can do with him legally is to lock him up for a capital felony, hope that he's convicted, and spends the rest of his life in prison. But I want you to get a close look at a very dangerous, deviant child predator. this is what one looks like. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you the next time. Take care.
Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd speaking here at the Polk County Sheriff's Office, live here, everybody, on WFLA Now. Want to let you know, folks, we got some major breaking news coming in the last several minutes. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo will be speaking at the top of the hour, so in about 10 minutes' time, we're going to be back here on WFLA Now, streaming live to our audiences on our app, website, social media platforms with the press conference from New York. Governor Andrew Cuomo responding to the State Attorney General's investigation into the sexual harassment allegations against Andrew Cuomo. So that's coming up here next in about 10 minutes' time on WFLA Now, on WFLA.com, our app, and, of course, our various social media platforms. In the meantime, folks, you can also check out WFLA.com for the very latest on Operation Child Predator. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd detailing here the 17 arrests that were made in this undercover bust here in Polk County, Florida. That and more on WFLA.com and the WFLA app.